Coral has more miles of canals than any other city in the world. 400 miles. That's more than Venice, more than Amsterdam. And most people who move here, even people who buy on a beautiful canal, sometimes feel like it is one of the most frustrating things about the move down here. Now, here's what most people think when they picture boating in Cape Coral. They see the Instagram reels, the sunsets, the dolphins, the sandbar parties. They think I'm going to buy a house right on a canal, I'm going to get a boat, and that is it. Dream unlocked. Heck, that was my dream. And I don't want to be the person that tells you that you're wrong because it's not wrong. That lifestyle is absolutely real. Vic and I live it. We love it. But here's what nobody tells you before you buy. The canal your house sits on determines what boat you can have, and the boat you buy determines where you can actually go. And if those two things don't line up, you've spent several $100,000s on a view, not a lifestyle. And Vic and I have been through this ourselves. We didn't get it right the first time, or even the second time. We've owned 3 different boats since moving to Cape Coral, and every single one of them has taught us something new. We've navigated the Caloosahatchee River, we've anchored off Sanibel, we've gone through Matlacha Pass, and we've definitely hit shallow water with the wrong boat. We know what those mistakes cost, not only in money, but in frustration and in time. And as a Cape Coral real estate agent, I've seen so many buyers learn the hard way after the fact. So I want to give you the information before you're standing in your brand new home and sad that your brand new boat won't clear the bridge at the end of your street. So here's what we're going to be covering today. We are going to break down the canal hierarchy because not all canals are created equal. We're going to talk about how boat selection and house selection have to happen together. I'm going to share our own story, 3 boats, real mistakes, real lessons, and we'll get into the physical constraints that most buyers don't even know about. And then finally, we're going to talk about where people actually go boating around here so you can get a picture of what that lifestyle looks like in practice. And then hopefully by the end of the video, you are going to know exactly what questions to ask before you buy anything, a boat or a house. So first up, let's discuss these canals because most people arrive in Cape Coral knowing it has canals. But what they don't know is that there are different tiers of canal access. And where your house falls on that tier has enormous consequences for your life on the water. So here is the breakdown. First of all, let's talk about our tier 1. Those are going to be your direct Gulf access canals. These canals connect to the Caloosahatchee River and ultimately out to the Gulf of America without any bridges or locks in your way. You can take virtually any size boat out, which is often why it's called sailboat access. So this is the top of the pyramid and the price tags reflect it. Now, our second tier of canals are also going to be Gulf access, but they are going to be indirect. You're still connected to the Gulf, but there are fixed bridges between you and open water. The height of those bridges is the ceiling on your boat. If you want a boat with a fixed T-top or a hard console that clears, say, 10 feet, and your bridge clearance is 9 feet at high tide, that boat never leaves your canal unless that water is really, really low. Next, we have our tier 3. This is going to be our freshwater canals. These canals don't connect to the Gulf at all, but they're still beautiful, they're peaceful, and you can kayak, paddleboard, maybe even put a small John boat in it. But if your plan was to boat to the beach, you're not doing it from these types of homes. So before you fall in love with a listing, you need to know which tier is the canal actually on. The listing photos will always show you a stunning waterway, but they'll rarely tell you whether that waterway gets you anywhere. And your real estate agent should be able to pull this for you. And if they can't or they don't know how to ask, that's information too. So this is the foundation for every decision that follows in this video. The canal tier determines your boat options. Your boat options then determine your lifestyle. We're building from the ground up here. Now, once you know what tier your canal is on, the next question is, what kind of boater are you actually trying to be? Because the answer to that question has to come before the boat purchase. And this is where I see buyers get it backwards a lot. So here's the sequence most buyers follow. They find the house they love. It happens to be on a canal. They buy the house. Then they think about what boat to get. But here's the problem. If you already have a boat, it dictates where you can live. And if you don't have a boat yet, where you live dictates what boat you can get. Those two things are locked together, but most buyers treat them as separate decisions. So I want you to start with the questions before you start with the listings. What kind of boating do you actually want to do? Are you planning long offshore fishing trips, day trips to the beach? Are you wanting to anchor at a sandbar, fishing in the back bays, cruising the intercoastals? Because each of those uses pushes you towards a very different type of boat and a very different type of canal access. A 36-foot cabin cruiser for overnight trips needs deep water and high bridge clearance. A shallow draft skiff for backcountry fishing can operate in 18 inches of water on canals that would strand anything else. So write down the 3 to 5 things you actually want to do on the water. Then reverse engineer the boat. Then reverse engineer the canal. Then start your home shopping. Now, I know this feels backwards, and in most other areas of the country, it probably is. You're in love with a house, and I'm asking you to build a spreadsheet. But the families who do this correctly are out on the water every weekend. And the ones who skip this step are the ones calling me a couple of years later asking about the resale on their Canal View home. So if you're trying to figure out where in Cape Coral to even start, whether canal access is the right priority for your budget, we built a free quiz that actually matches you with either Cape Coral or Fort Myers based on your lifestyle. Link is in the description. It takes just a couple of minutes, and it'll actually help you narrow this down. Now, I want to get personal for a minute because I didn't follow any of this advice when we first moved here, and it has cost us a pretty penny. We went through 3 boats in 3 years trying to find the right one. So here's what that journey actually looked like. When Vic and I moved to Cape Coral, we had this vision. We wanted to cruise, long trips, overnight stays, anchor in a protective cove somewhere beautiful. That was really the dream. So we bought a 36-foot rinker. This is a cabin, sleeping quarters, everything. AC, TV, it felt right. We had come from lake boating where we anchored off and swam in the water, but we quickly discovered what we actually love doing here. And that was anchoring off the coast of Sanibel. Beautiful, shallow water, the kind of place where you just drop anchor and spend the afternoon. But the problem was our rinker had an inboard-outboard drive, and you can't take that boat into shallow water. The lower unit is fixed, and you hit anything under there, and you're looking at a serious repair bill. Sanibel's flats were completely off limits for us. So eventually we sold the rinker and bought a hurricane deck boat. Our thought was it's lighter, more versatile, better for those day trips that we wanted to take. Now, the deck boat got us into shallower water, but here's what nobody told us about deck boats: the flat bow. When you're out on the Gulf and you hit waves, and the Gulf is absolutely going to give you waves, that front of the boat slaps every single one of them. You are not cutting through anything. You're fighting the water literally the whole way. And after a few trips, it honestly wasn't even fun anymore. It was work. Of course, it gave us a few laughs, and we affectionately called it Old Slappy. But eventually we sold the deck boat and thought much harder this time about what we actually needed. We ended up with a Sea Ray, which has a deep V hull in the front, so it cuts through waves properly instead of fighting them. And it also has an outboard motor, which means we can raise it up and take the boat into basically 18 inches of water. Now we do everything. We can take it out to the Gulf. We can anchor off of Sanibel. We've even taken it to Matlacha Pass, which is one of the most beautiful and challenging navigations in this entire area because it's narrow, skinny, and full of shallow spots that will ruin your day if you don't know what you're doing. And now we can do it all. 3 boats, but each one taught us something. But here's the thing, if we had asked the right questions before we bought the first one, we might have gotten there a lot faster. Now, I'm not embarrassed by the journey, but I'd rather you learn from me than repeat it. Now, let's get into the physical stuff, the constraints that are baked in the canal system itself. Because even with the perfect boat, there are things on the water that will stop you cold if you don't know they're there. The canal tier tells you whether you're connected to the Gulf, but what it doesn't tell you is what stands between you and the Gulf once you leave your dock. That's where the real variables live. Fixed bridges have posted clearance height, but that clearance changes with the tide. So at high tide, you can lose a foot or more of clearance versus low tide. And if your boat has that fixed T-top, a hard bimini, or a fly bridge, You need to know that number before you buy the house, not afterwards. And this is a conversation your agent should initiate. And if they don't, ask directly, what is the bridge clearance on this canal? What's the clearance at high water? What type of boats have neighbors been running? On top of that, canal width affects more than you think. On a narrow canal, you can't make a clean turn in a big boat. You're doing a 15-point turn in your own backyard, slowly, carefully, and of course, while all the neighbors watch. But wider canals allow larger boats, faster exits, and more flexibility. So if you're buying with a specific boat in mind, walk to the end of the dock and visualize the maneuver. Then ask your agent about the width. Now, for depth, Cape Coral's canals were dredged decades ago, and some of them have silted in since. The posted depth on the listing is often a nominal number, not a surveyed one. So if you're running a deep V hull or a boat with significant draft, this matters. A local marine survey can tell you actual depth, and it is worth it to know that number. Now, none of these are deal breakers on their own, but together they add up to the difference between a boat that actually goes somewhere and one that becomes an expensive lawn ornament on the water. So know the numbers before you close. Okay, so now you know the tiers, you know the constraints, you've got the right boat in mind. Now let's talk about where people actually go, because Cape Coral's boating lifestyle is specific to this part of Southwest Florida, and it's worth understanding what the playground actually looks like. Cape Coral sits at the mouth of the Caloosahatchee River. From there, you have access to some of the most diverse boating in all of Florida. Understanding the geography of where you're going shapes what kind of boat and canal access you actually need. So let's talk about the Caloosahatchee River. This river is your highway. Whether you're heading east towards Lake Okeechobee and the Intercoastal Waterway System or west towards the Gulf, you're starting here from the majority of Cape Coral. It's wide, it's well marked, and it's navigatable for most boat sizes. But it can get choppy when the wind picks up, and you'll share it with commercial traffic and much larger boats as well. There are also plenty of manatee zones that you do need to go with low wake. So know the rules, give way correctly, and you will be absolutely fine. Of course, you have access to Fort Myers Beach, but two of our favorite places to visit are Sanibel and Captiva. This is the most popular boating destination from Cape Coral. The waters off Sanibel's north shore are shallow and clear. They're just perfect for anchoring, shelling, swimming. And then you have these sandbars that draw crowds on the weekends. So if you want to anchor here in any comfort, you want a boat with a shallow draft and good holding. This was the destination that ultimately drove our decision on the Sea Ray. Now, if you want the quieter, more local experience, Matlacha Pass is where you want to go. It's narrow, it's winding, and it's shallow in places, but it is stunning. The old fishing village of Matlacha is accessible by boat or by car, and the Pine Island Sound opens up into some of the best backcountry fishing in the state. But this is not beginner water, and you need to know the tides, you need to know the markers, and you need a boat that can handle 18-inch depths without panicking. This is the lifestyle people are coming to Cape Coral for. It's real, it's accessible, and it's genuinely special. But every one of these destinations has requirements, and the more you understand those requirements before you buy, the faster you get to living the life instead of troubleshooting it like we did. So this all brings me to the final point, and honestly, the one that I want to leave you with. Because everything we've talked about today exists in service of one thing: making sure the boating lifestyle you came here for is actually available to you once you arrive. So I want to be honest with you about something. The boating lifestyle in Cape Coral is everything people say it is. It is not hype. Vic and I genuinely love it. This past weekend, we took the boat up to Captiva, anchored off the island with our friends, had a barbecue, and we were back by dinner. There are moments on that boat where I think, yes, this is exactly why we moved here. But we got there by figuring out the hard stuff. And most of the people I've worked with who are unhappy with their boating experience, it's not because Cape Coral failed them. It's because they didn't match the house, the canal, and the boat to the life that they really wanted to live down here. So here's the checklist I'd run through if I were your advisor before you bought anything. The first one is, what do you want to do on the water? Be specific, not just boat, but do you want to anchor, cruise, fish, party, explore? Because each of those is a completely different setup. 2, what canal tier do you need for that? Do you need direct access, indirect with a bridge? Or is fresh water going to suffice? And then 3, what boat matches both the destination and the canal? Hull type, draft, motor configuration. 4, do the bridge clearances, canal width, and depth at this specific property work for that boat? 5, have I run this by someone who actually lives this life and knows the water? And that last one matters more than people realize, because the MLS doesn't tell you that Matlacha Pass at low tide will strand a boat with more than 18 inches of draft. An agent's website doesn't tell you that the bridge at the end of your canal was posted at 10 feet, but runs closer to 9 at high tide. That's the information that lives in experience, and it's the information I'm trying to give you before you need it. If you're seriously considering Cape Coral and boating is part of that dream, I want to help you make sure you get this right. Not because I want the sale, but because I've watched too many people move here and then quietly not use the water that they paid for. Now, we put together a free Cape Coral relocation guide that covers this and a lot more. The link is in the description and it's completely free. And if you want to talk through your specific situation, what you want to do on the water, what your budget looks like, what part of Cape Coral makes sense for you, reach out. I will get on a call with you and we'll figure all of this out together before you buy anything. So here's what we covered today. Cape Coral has 400 miles of canals, but they're not all the same. The tier that your canal sits on determines what boat you can run and where you can get. So boat selection and house selection are one decision, not two. And the boating lifestyle you moved here for is completely real if you set it up correctly from the beginning. So you came into this video knowing that Cape Coral had canals. You leave hopefully knowing how the canal system actually works, what questions to ask before you buy, and what kind of boat matches the life you've been trying to build. That's real information, the kind that takes people 2 or 3 years of living here to figure it out on your own. Hello. The water here is genuinely incredible, and I'm still amazed by it. And I want that amazement to be your starting point, not your destination after you've worked through all the regrets like we have. Go build the right setup, and I'll see you out there on the water.